before I introduce her, I just want to thank Kia and Deborah for working diligently behind the scenes to put together this wonderful webinar for us and recruiting such a wonderful speaker tonight. Thank you both for your all of the work that you're doing behind the scenes. And I'm going to turn it over to Deborah. And I hope that all of you are having a wonderful, wonderful fall season. And we're in for a treat today. Deborah.
Thank you, Cindy. It is my pleasure to finally introduce to you today's speaker. Sarah Zerwin first came to my attention while I was planning last year's webinars, and her work on developing more meaningful grading fit perfectly within the classroom theme. However, the work she's completed in her soon-to-be-released book, offering strategies for student-driven learning with secondary readers and writers, made me even more committed to introducing her to the ERWC community. Sarah, like most of us, is a high school English teacher. She teaches in Boulder, Colorado, and has over 20 years of classroom experience. She's a nationally recognized presenter and also works with teachers through the Colorado Writing Project. So please join me today in welcoming Sarah Zerwin to the ERWC community. Thank you for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you, Deborah. I'm thrilled to be here.
And the screen is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, there we go. Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody had a good day. I'm counting down the days to Thanksgiving break. I don't know about all of you. It's coming soon. We get the whole week off, which is very, very nice. So, all right. Well, I am absolutely thrilled to be here today, and I'm very grateful for the invitation to be with all of you. So thank you so much. And what I'm going to be sharing today is focusing on some of the reading strategies in my book, Step Aside, Strategies for Student-Driven Learning with Secondary Readers and Writers. The book comes out, we'll start shipping on December 9th, and pre-orders are available starting on November 18th. So I'm very excited about all of that. Yeah. And this is me. I teach at Fairview High School in Boulder, Colorado. And there's a list of pretty much, well, what I'm teaching this year, 10th grade, just standard level 10th grade, IB 11 and 12, actually, creative writing and theory of knowledge for our diploma candidates. But there's a list of like all the classes I have taught across my high school teaching career. And this is my 29th year as an educator. I've taught in Colorado, Illinois, and Washington State. And that right there is my school, Fairview, on the hill there, right at the base of the mountains here in Boulder. And sarahmzerwin.com is my my website, and there's a contact form there. If you're please reach out if you would like to. And I've got a document for you later that has that link on it as well. So here's my plan for us today. I want to offer some context and then some reading strategies to teach that get us out of students' way, and some use of the chat and conversation along the way, and some time for Q&A at the end. So that's my plan for our hour or so here together. So let's start though with what I mean by student-driven learning. And student-driven learning, I think that oftentimes, I don't know, put a few thoughts in the chat. When I say student-driven learning, what do you think? Let's just put a few thoughts in the chat there before I move on with this. Yeah. Yep. So far, what's showing up there is very much the way that I think about it too. Absolutely. And so, yeah, thank you so much. So this is my daughter, Jane. And Jane is now 21 years old, but this is she's a senior at the University of Colorado studying art. And this is a photo of Jane when she was 16 and she was just learning how to drive. And so I really think about student-driven learning as we want students in the driver's seat, literally. And sometimes people, when they think about student-driven learning, they think the teacher is out in the hall doing nothing while the kids just have the run of the classroom, right? And we know that that's not true, right? I mean, literally think about teaching driving to a teenager. You don't just throw the keys at them and a credit card and say, go have fun. There's so many things that you need to teach them, right? They're the rules of the road to follow, right? But there's a lot of choice too. Like students can choose, and our drivers can choose which route to take, how fast to go, should they use GPS or not. Sometimes we're sitting in the passenger seat right next to them, right? And we have to think about that. And sometimes they head off on their own. This is a photo from about a year later from that previous photo I just showed you. This is my daughter Jane and my niece Claire. And Claire flew from Montana to Denver to go to a Billie Eilish concert with Jane. And they drove themselves from Boulder to Denver, which is about a 25-minute drive, to go to a concert. Of course, I stayed up until 12:30 or 1 to make sure they got home okay after. But we really just have to trust that they've learned what they need and they'll be okay. And fun fact, Claire is flying in tomorrow because Billie Eilish is again happening this weekend. And now they're both college students and they're going to do the whole thing, same thing again. So lots of fun. And why student-driven learning now more than ever? So I'm curious, what do you think? Like, what do our students seem to be struggling with after the last few years? And how are schools and districts responding to the ways that students seem to be struggling? What do you think? Maybe put a few thoughts in the chat. Yeah, I've seen some struggle with independent reading and writing and reading stamina for sure. Engagement. Yep. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that too. We feel like around here that we're starting to see less of the impacts of the pandemic years on the kids. They seem a little more engaged this year than they have been the last few. So how are schools and districts responding to the ways students seem to be struggling? Like in your world, what's happening? Put a few thoughts in the chat. Mm, yeah. Hmm. Oh, wow. Yeah, thank you for all of this. My goodness. Um, This one here from Carrie, district has mandated new curriculum. That is what I'm seeing in my world as well. And our middle school teachers in my district were just mandated to use a very like canned curriculum. And it's word on the street is that the kids are not enjoying it. So it's frustrating, right? It's very frustrating. What I'm talking about is something completely different from all of that. So what you're going to need for this session, you'll need this document, and I want to drop this in the chat for you. You can, of course, just grab the link right there, but here's also the link in the chat to the same document. But you're going to need that because I'll be referring to that a few times during this session. So make sure you have that open. And then I'm going to invite you to practice some strategies from the perspective of a student. How does that sound? Are you up for it? Are you ready? Okay. Does everyone have the document? Anybody having trouble with the document? Okay. Thanks, Kia, for posting it again. I really appreciate it. Okay. So there is a 3-step meaning making process that I'm going to be talking about today that underpins the work in my new book. And by the way, these illustrations you see on here, my daughter did these. They're illustrations throughout the book that my daughter did, like officially contracted through my publisher. So it was a really fun project for the two of us to do together. But this 3-step meaning making process underpins everything that I talk about in Step Aside. And the first step is start small with what do you notice. The second step is seek connections to grow your thinking. And the third step is take action, decide what you've figured out and do something with it. So I'm going to start with us today on this start small item. And the strategy I'm going to have you practice is something that I call original thought annotations. So original thought annotations, or as the kids know it in my world, OTAs. The idea sort of, anybody familiar with this book, Marilyn Prowse, Reading with Presence? The idea was very inspired by this book because in this book, Marilyn talks about, she has all these reader response papers that the kids do, and they're like these one-page papers, and she gives them all these reader response questions. And the emphasis is really on the students developing their own original thinking. And so that kind of got me thinking about these original thought annotations. I have my students complete them on a 3x3-inch sticky note. And we go through many sticky notes in my class, and then they basically indicate on the sticky note, I noticed and I think. These instructions are in that document that I shared with you. So please feel free to use, adapt however you want to. And if you improve on them, please let me know so that I can benefit from your awesome insights. And here's some student OTAs to just give you an idea of what they look like. So this is from a sophomore of mine. And at the top, she's got the title, she forgot to put this on the OTA, so she put it above it, but the title of the book and the page number. And then she has on there, it says number 5. And the number 5 refers to, in the instructions, there's a list of the different types of things that students can notice. And a number 5 is something you're wondering about or a question that you have. And so you can see the student, she wrote down, she quoted from the book, today was Friday. Friday was a safe day for I noticed. And then I think there are days that he doesn't drink. I wonder why. Why doesn't he drink on those days? And so I love the 3x3-inch sticky note because it's a very small, safe container for one original thought that students are having. And they can just start small. And sometimes students like kind of have a, I don't know, it's kind of hard for them sometimes. And so I have to come over and like help them. I was like, point to something on the page that you've noticed. And they might point to it. I say, well, why? Why did that jump out at you? And they'll be, I don't know, because I thought it was weird that blah, blah, blah. I'm like, perfect. Put that on your OTA. And they look at me and they're like, it's that easy? I said, yeah, it's that easy. So just getting them started sometimes takes a little bit, but once they get it, they like really get it. This is one of my favorite OTAs I've ever gotten from any student. It was from one of my AP Lit students, and it's from the book As I Lay Dying. And if you've read the book, you know that like about halfway through, Addie Bundren, who has died, is narrating a chapter. And so this was my student's response to that. Addie has a chapter. There's her I notice. WTF is her I think. And I just think it's so perfect for a Faulkner book. I just love that so much. So I love that it captured her raw response to the text. And so as you're doing OTAs with kids, I think it's really important to help them focus their noticings a little bit. And so in Marilyn Prow's book, there's a whole list of her reading response categories, and highly recommend to grab this book. It's a wonderful list of different like ways you can get kids to focus their thinking. There's also Notice a Note by Kylie Beers and Robert Prost. Both they're one for this one is about reading fiction, and then also this one about reading nonfiction. They have wonderful, lists of things that kids could notice while they're reading. And then you might use your curriculum to help narrow their thinking. Like here's the AP English Literature um, uh, skills for reading and for writing, but you could use this and you could have the kids like on the top of their sticky note, they could say, which AP English, skill is the thing that you noticed that you've got on your sticky note. Or this is a document that I've put together through the years of details to notice in literary texts. And so kids could put structure or narration or speaker or characters or setting or that sort of thing on their sticky note. Or this is my list that has come about over, many years and actually working on it with my colleagues and such. This is the list for like just basic OTAs that I give my students. And, I tell them, find the thing you noticed and then look at the list and try to figure out why you noticed it and then use whatever you said there. Like say they're like, oh, it's a number 2. It surprised me. So like write about how it surprised you in your I think. And it has really, it helps kids, I think, to teach them how to like notice something and have a thought about it. And so are you up for some practice? We'll do a little practice here. So I'm going to read a poem to you, Things Haunt. It's in the document that I already put in the chat. And if you don't have it, here's the tiny URL to the document. So please grab it there if you need to. And then you're going to do one OTA in the chat. And so obviously we can't do sticky notes today because we're all, sitting in different spaces and such. But please, for your OTA in the chat, just write, I noticed, and write, I think, and maybe even put, like the number from the list and the instructions that are in that document if you want to do that. So, all right, I'm going to read the poem to you. So it is Things Haunt by Joshua Jennifer Espinoza. And I did contact Jennifer to uh, for permission to use this poem in presentations. So just so you know. So let me read to you. Things haunt. California is a desert, and I am a woman inside it. The road ahead bends sideways, and I lurch within myself. I am full of ugly feelings, awful thoughts, bad dreams of doom, and so much love left unspoken. Is Mercury in retrograde? Someone asks. Someone answers, no, it's something else like that, though. Something else like that. That should be my name. When you ask me, am I really a woman, a human being, a coherent identity, I'll say, no, I'm something else like that, though. A true citizen of planet Earth closes their eyes and says what they are before the mirror. A good person gives and asks for nothing in return. I give and ask for only one thing. Hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me. Bear the weight of my voice and don't forget, things haunt. Things exist long after they are killed. Okay, I'm worried I didn't read all the hear me's. Did I miss one? I might have missed one. I'm sorry if I missed one. Anyhow, so this is a poem I've used with great success with my sophomores in my classroom. And so I would like for you to, I'm going to put on a 3-minute timer. Just try to practice doing one OTA in the chat. Just put, I notice, I think, and say what you notice, say what you think, and maybe put on like what number, what type of thing off the instructions for the OTAs was it? Was it a, number one, something that was important, a number two, something that surprised you, etc. Make sense? Okay. I'm going to start the timer, 3 minutes. Practice an OTA. And if you get yours done, maybe just scroll through everybody else's and see what other people are noticing. Okay, our time is wrapping up for working on your OTA. So what do people notice? Anybody willing to unmute and talk about yours briefly?
I noticed it's Mercury in retrograde,
Mm-hmm.
and I've heard people make that statement before, and I think that that statement is made to make other people feel comfortable with the
Mhm.
feelings that you have.
Yeah, that's great that you bring that up, Deborah. The Mercury's in retrograde thing, the first time I used this poem with my students, some students, they brought that up. They said, we noticed this, but we weren't sure what it really was about. And as I had been walking around the room while kids were just talking about the poem within their tables, I told a group, well, go ahead and look it up and see what you can figure out. And um, Mercury in retrograde means that it's like moving backwards is supposed to be moving forward, or it looks like it's moving backwards when it's actually moving forwards or something. It's been a while since I looked it up. And so that's a really interesting detail in the poem for sure. Yeah, good. Thank you. How about one more person unmute and talk about what you noticed and what you thought about it?
Sarah, I'm not sure they can unmute and
Oh,
speak.
really?
I think they can only speak in the chat. Is that right, Kia?
Oh, okay.
I if they raise their hand, I think I can allow them to talk.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Is that what?
Yeah, I don't think we
Okay.
can unmute.
Oh, okay. Zoom has changed some since the last time I did one of these
Yeah.
webinars, so it's all
Yeah,
good.
and webinar, we can allow them, me as the host, I can allow someone to talk when they raise their hand. So
Okay.
let me know if you're taking responses from the floor and
Okay. I think for now I'll just move on. When we get to the Q&A at the end, we'll need to do that. So thank
okay.
you everybody for your thoughtful OTAs in the chat. I appreciate that. Okay, let's keep rolling here. So the three-step meaning making process, start small. What do you notice? In my classroom, it's very much OTAs all the time. My sophomores, for example, every day they come in and they have either 10 to 20 minutes of silent reading, depending on what else we're doing that day. And the expectation is that they'll do 2 OTAs on their independent reading book while during that time. And so they get their writer's notebooks out, they get their sticky notes set up, and there's a big poster on the wall that reminds them what they need to have in their OTAs. And I remind them of this meaning making process all the time to remind them, why are we starting with OTAs? Why are you doing so many of them? Because I'm trying to help you understand that like building your own ideas and your own thinking starts with the very small things that you notice and what you think about them. So I want them to be practicing all the time. In my IB Lit class, the students, when we are studying a text, they're doing OTAs constantly while they're studying and reading, and it's the foundation for everything that we build from there. All of the writing and the discussion and everything that we do from there starts with their OTAs. So they're just doing them constantly while they're reading and studying our text. So, okay, now I'm going to talk about the seek connections step to grow your thinking, and the strategy I'm going to show you is rambling thoughts. So let's talk about that. Rambling thoughts. All right, this is what they look like for rambling thoughts. And this is a version from one of my sophomores from last year. And you should know that I'll walk you through what she's done here. And it was about her thinking just about the first 7 pages of Antigone, the play Antigone by Sophocles. So all of this was based on just the first 7 pages. So where the idea for rambling came from for me was from Linda Reef's Quick Write Handbook. And here she has a quick write called The Rambling Autobiography. And my students, we did that one day, and I was really amazed at the quality of thinking that came out of them while they were rambling. There was something about telling the kids, like, just ramble, just get your thinking out of your head. It's just for you. Don't worry about sentence structure or anything. Just get the thoughts on the page. There was something really beautiful about that opened up some of the best writing I had seen in my students. And it was for that whole school year. And it was like April when I had them do this. I thought, oh, there's really something to this. And so that's where the rambling piece came from. And then if you've read this book, A Novel Approach by Kate Roberts, it's wonderful. And she has in her book, she's got a sort of a very similar 2-page spread thing that she has students to do where they do some like short thinking and long thinking. And that kind of got me going on this too. And I was thinking, well, what could I have them do with the OTAs to help them develop it into a little bit more develop more thinking from there. And so these are my rambling thoughts instructions, and these instructions are in the document that I shared with you as well. And like with the OTA instructions, please use, adapt, send them back to me with revisions, whatever you can do with that for me. And so I tell the kids to select 3 to 4 OTAs to start with. And they really could be like original thought annotations they've been doing, or any notes from what we've done in class, or anything from that. Find a 2-page spread in their writer's notebook, and et cetera, et cetera. And, they put the OTAs on one side and they ramble on the other. And so I also provide in the instructions, you'll see this if you open that up, these wonderful questions from Newkirk's book, Embarrassment. And they're questions that ask to push your thinking as you ramble. So I tell the kids, if you get stuck, please find one of these questions and see if it can get you started again. Because for whatever amount of time I give them in class for rambling, I want them to try to keep rambling for the entire time. My sophomores worked on this today, and they maintained about, once they had their OTAs selected, they all maintained about 10 to 12 minutes of solid rambling, which was great. My IB students usually will go for longer than that. But awesome. Okay, so let's look closely at this. So her first OTA was this. I noticed if it's a crime, then it's a crime that God commands. And Antigone said that. I often have to remind the kids, like, for your I notice, it really should be something specific that you can quote and point to on a page. They'll really try to get them to do that. Sometimes they actually jump to an interpretation with I noticed, instead of just like making the I noticed like the thing that you noticed. And then she said, I think even though others see it as a crime, she knows she has to do it like she owes it to her brother. And then this one, he is my brother, I will bury him. Antigone will be punished with death, but Ismene won't, because she doesn't want to help. And then this one, I noticed Antigone says Polynices can't have a proper burial. This could be because he may have done something wrong. And so this is the pre-writing. One of the steps I have the kids do is get your OTAs on the page and then write around them, like try to draw some connections and do some pre-writing to sort of start to build your thinking. And so these are the notes that she wrote. Antigone isn't worried about punishment. She will still bury her brother. She knows it's the right thing to do. And later we find out Creon thinks Polynices wasn't loyal. And that was from an OTA that wouldn't fit on the page. And then the writing on the other side, this is what she wrote. This whole burial thing was confusing, but slowly made a little more sense. At first, they wouldn't tell us why in the world one brother, Polynices, couldn't have the same proper burial as the other brother name. So she couldn't pull the name out, and that's okay. This is just super rough rambling. Then Creon says one brother wasn't as loyal, or at least that's what I got from it. Antigone doesn't agree with any of this at all. She knows that there is punishment of death for giving Polynices a proper burial, but she doesn't care. She says if it is a crime, then it is a crime that God commands. I think she knows no matter what others say in the future, it will be the right thing to do. This comes up a lot more when she talks about making right with the dead rather than the living. This is most likely because she still has to face her dead brother in heaven one day. She wants to face him knowing she did him right. I agree with Antigone's point of view and think she should bury him, but I don't think her doing so will go well. If you've read Antigone, pretty insightful response there at the end. So chat invite for you. What connections do you see the student making, or what bigger ideas does she seem to be exploring, or where is the student writing to discover what she's thinking? What do you think? Put some thoughts in the chat. Yeah. So yeah, wonderful. So yeah, this student is really starting to get into some of the big issues of the play already, just from the first 7 pages. And from she took just her first initial OTAs and started doing some writing. And yeah, so she's really, as you're pointing out here in the chat, she's really starting to poke at the really big issues of the play. And the thing is, she's getting there on her own, right? Which means she's going to understand it and know it a lot better than if I, had got up there and just, told the kids what they should be seeing in it. She's finding it on her own. So awesome. Okay. If you would indulge, do you mind if I read to you my favorite rambling thoughts I have ever gotten from any student? And these, by the way, are in my book. So if you feel like, wow, I want a copy of that to show my students, it's in the new book. So, and it's from my student Soraya, grade 12, when she wrote this. And it was that crazy pandemic year. So AP Lit, it's about the Great Gatsby. Here we go. It's literally hilarious how in love Nick is with Gatsby. Like he spent 5 out of 10 pages in this chapter describing him romantically and sentimentally, and he has some resentment towards Daisy for being the object of that affection. Also, it's interesting how it's considered totally normal for Tom to have a quote girl in New York, but when he finds out that she knows someone that he doesn't, he gets upset and thinks he's giving her too much freedom. Like, what kind of bull, etc. Also, West Egg is super personified in this chapter through both Nick and Daisy's eyes. It's sort of a bubble of upper class white people who are very fluffy. IDK, the word I'm looking for. Oh, it's frivolous. They don't care about real issues and concern themselves with rumors about Gatsby and dinners and stuff like that. What else I started? Reading chapter 7 and the way the characters react to the heat is really something else. And Gatsby going into this weird depressive state because of Daisy. Also, his obsession with recreating the past perfectly is super unhealthy. LMAO. I'm curious about Daisy's reaction to the party because apparently she didn't enjoy any of it except when she was with Gatsby. So is it the frivolity, the drunkenness? I thought she liked Gatsby's lifestyle, but oh, that's why he changed it so suddenly in the next chapter because she didn't like his lifestyle. So he changed it to something he thought she'd like better. And Nick realizes this, which is why he doesn't like it. And that's manifested in his dislike of the butler who was, quote, rude to him. And it's like a symbol of how he feels about Gatsby changing himself for Daisy because he's in love with the Gatsby he met, not the Gatsby that Daisy's in love with. Ooh, big breath there. A lot of rambling. Also, Gatsby's old sport thing might have some hidden meaning. IDK. From what I remember, he only calls Nick old sport, which is like eye emoji, you know. Why did Tom go with the polo athlete thing at first? Did he like it or was he just tired of saying it was wrong? Because then he goes back into oblivion or whatever. Also, it's so funny how Gatsby and Daisy just keep asking Nick to be there while they make googly eyes at each other. Poor Nick is just like, it really is that meme. And then a bunch of random typing. Okay, that's all I got, I guess. But I want to say I'm really rooting for Nick and Gatsby to end up together. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm sure there's a fanfic about it somewhere. So yeah, thank you. I see the laughing emoji there from somebody. Yeah, thank you. I love this so much. And what I love about it is it's rough and it's rambly and it's missing all kinds of punctuation and there are errors and all of that. But the thinking, can you see the thinking? Like this is really a student who is, yeah, she definitely should write the fanfic. Totally. She absolutely could. But the thinking, you can see her writing her way into some really, I think, sophisticated character analysis based on what she's noticed in the text. This rambling was done typing because it was that pandemic year and I didn't have them keeping paper writer's notebooks because they weren't all in class with me all the time. So yeah, I really love this. I think it's very wonderful. So brain dumps. Yeah, definitely a brain dump. That's a great word for it too. I love it. So yeah. Yeah, the moment of insight halfway through, is it the big O? That's why he changed it so suddenly. Is that what you're thinking about? Yeah, it's awesome. I just love it. I love the googly eyes too. So had to make sure that the when the whoever was actually like producing the pages, like my editor was like, make sure you put the googly eyes in there, the little eye emojis. Okay, so we don't have time today for you to actually practice some rambling. I would love to give you a chance to practice it so you could see how it feels. But if you were to ramble and build your thinking about things haunt, what might you explore? Like, what would you be interested in trying to push on to try to understand about things haunt? If you were to do some, if you were to do some rambling thoughts right now about things haunt. So throw it in the chat. What do you think? What might you want to explore? Yeah, nice. Just in the first like few things that have been put in the chat here, we've got the planets, big and small, and the speaker's portrayal of themselves, image of the desert, the speaker's past, just like with Gatsby, focusing on identity and how the narrator is trying to shape their own identity or how they see themselves, gender expectations, and this poem is written by a transgender poet, so. Which is not a detail I share with the kids until they start like unpacking the poem a little bit. And when I feel like it's the right moment to say, hey, by the way, let me tell you something about the poet. And it kind of opens up more thinking for them, just like at the right moment. Winding California Roads. Awesome. Awesome. Do you see how all of these ideas are so unique and individual to each of you? Because they're all based on your individual thought that you had to begin with the poem. And all of them are completely valid, like ways to explore the poem. And they would be your own set of meaning that you own and that you are excited about. So awesome. I wish I could give you time to ramble today. That would be great. So let me show you some more step 2 strategies. So rambling thoughts is one that I use very, very frequently, but there's other things that I do too to invite students to seek connections among their ideas. So there's concept mapping. And the way that I approach concept mapping comes from this book, Creating Self-Regulated Learners by Linda B. Nielsen. She writes for a college audience, but there's so many strategies in this book that are fantastic for our K through 12 classrooms as well. And here's just an example of a typical concept map that's, I think this was a group concept map actually that my students did, a group of my students did on the color purple. And so you can see they've done a lot of exploration here, and what they have put central on the map is change and growth. And they came to that themselves through their conversation and such. By the way, conversation in class is another really wonderful seeking connections opportunity. So the kids are literally using each other to try to help build their thinking about the text. In my IB Lit class, we do a big whole class seminar, Harkness style discussion every week. And so the kids get used to having this open space, this table where they can sit together and really try to figure out their thinking. Small group conversation when my sophomores were reading in book clubs, and this book is amazing, by the way. If you haven't read it or use it with your students, it's really, really, really beautiful. But for the book club that was doing this, I gave each book club like a set of slides that just had some really basic sort of a template on them for the kinds of things they could collect. And this was how this group with this particular book started with their slides. They put some images of the book on the first one. And then this was a slide I provided to them. What are the big topics your book takes on? And this was their list of topics that their book was taking on. And then this page was what seemed to be the most important moments and why those particular moments. So it was just me encouraging them just to kind of collect important moments from the text. And this slide was a place for them to do a concept map. And they're early on in the book. And so as they were doing this slide, so they didn't have everything on there yet, but they already knew that they wanted love to be the center of their concept map, which I think is beautiful. But one of the first steps from the concept map strategy is to make a big list of concepts that you might put on your map. And so those are the concepts that they wanted to include in their map. Character study. I just saw these in the hall today. This set of photos that I have is from a few years ago, but when studying As I Lay Dying, one of my colleagues has the students in groups each pick a character, and then they have to draw the character, and then they have to think about their head, heart, back, left arm, right arm, legs, etc. I don't know, people call these body maps. There's all kinds of things, but anything that's like this would be an opportunity for your students to work together to seek connections across their thinking that they've done. And so they can use like the small things that they've noticed about the characters and start building them into bigger ideas via something like this. So I love this kind of thing too. And then one pagers. This is something I pulled out of this book, Penny Kittle and Kelly Gallagher's 4 Essential Studies. And there's also the New York Times, there's a link to this, has a wonderful resource for creating one pagers for an end of semester challenge that they did a little while ago. But I love the New York Times Learning Network stuff. And this is what these look like. I mean, I call them like 2-page spreads. You can call them whatever you want. But this was a sophomore of mine collecting thinking on the Marrow Thieves while she was reading. And here's another one on the Marrow Thieves. And this one is on the patron saints of nothing. And so is this one. And this one was interesting. So these were in process when I took these photos. He'd already set up this page with these big empty, the character names, and he was going to fill each character's name with quotes from the text, which I thought was super cool. Quotes or just words that are related to the character. So he kind of made a plan for himself. This is another one from Patron Saints of Nothing. So each, really different and unique to the students, but they're using it as an opportunity to pull their thinking together. And this book charts is something that I would have my AP Lit students would do this. I would kind of make this template for them, and I'd have them draw this into their writer's notebook. And all the different boxes are each get at one of the skills and the standards for in the curriculum for AP Lit. So here's an example for one of my students on the things they carried. And whenever I do this, I often do the work myself too. This was when we were reading Beloved that year. This is my partial, just started book chart on Beloved. So I like to do the work with the kids as much as I can. I mean, anything that invites students to collect individual OTAs from step 1 and start forging connections between them to grow thinking works for a step 2 task. So really anything. And then we're heading on to step 3 now. Take action, decide what you've figured out and do something with it. And step 3 ideas, they could write something, they could speak somehow, like a presentation. There could be some big discussion that they have to bring their thinking to. They could, present or make something like an artistic response or something like that. There's so many things to do. And this is a writing task that I could have invited you to do based on Things Haunt. Choose one line from Things Haunt as the beginning of a 100 words of a memoir or personal narrative writing. Which line makes you think about something from your life? And maybe the line you choose will be from an OTA. Maybe you'll include something from your rambling thoughts in your memoir writing, etc. So you can see how this task would have deliberately drawn from, the 3-step meaning making process from the beginning, the OTAs, the rambling thoughts, and now let's try to actually write something with it. So I don't know, what might you invite students to do with step 3 with Things Haunt? Put some ideas in the chat, maybe. Lupe, thank you for that comment. You're so sweet. I'm glad that it's going well on your end. That's awesome. I don't usually share my slides. You're asking for access to the images to use as samples to recreate. A lot of it is like student work that I just have permission for using right here, so I can't share them on with that. So yeah, you could definitely have them compared to another poet with a similar theme. That would be super cool. Like if they had another poem that they'd been reading, and they've got some OTAs between the 2 poems that are similar, and then maybe they rambled about that, and then they could write some comparison contrasts about the 2 poems. That would be awesome. Great idea. Any more ideas in the chat about what you could have students do with Things Haunt? Create a dialogue between the speaker of Things Haunt and the speaker of another poem. That'd be awesome. Love it. Awesome. There's so many things that you can do, right? So many things. Anything that will really invite the students to start with their own original thinking and then build from there works. Anything like that would work. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm wrapping up here so that we can have some time to chat a little bit here at the end. So I'm just going to try to pull things together here at the end. So remember Jane. By the way, she is fully resigned to know that she may be in my presentations related to the book forever. So she's fine with that. The meaning making. So this is student-led learning with students driving, because the meaning making starts with what students think. And every subsequent step then builds on that student thinking. Wherever they end up is a place unique to each of them. It's their own understanding about a text. These are strategies they can use again and again and again with any text, no matter how complex. So I literally teach the exact same strategies to my on grade level 10th graders and my very, very advanced 12th graders. They use the exact same strategies. They are like infinitely like differentiatable, really. And just like by the nature of the task, because students can engage with it at whatever level they can engage with it. And it gives them shows them how to build their thinking. And this process keeps us out of the way because it anchors on students' original thinking from the very start. So that's why it's so important. And back to the steps in the meaning making process. Start small, see connections, and take action. What I've just shared with you today is the stuff basically from my reading chapter in Step Aside. We did the original thought annotations, and then we talked about rambling thoughts, and then we talked about write, speak, present, discuss, make something. But the same stuff works for writing, the same 3 steps. So with writing, students can do OTAs about mentor text, about their own writing, about each other's writing, and then they can use that, all of that thinking to have reader feedback conversations, and then maybe shared rubric and checklist building. And then from there, they can use all of that to make a plan for revision and revise their work, starting with what they have noticed about their own writing or about the kind of writing that you're studying and building from there. With grading, also, OTAs about one's own journey towards their learning goals. And in my class, my students set their own learning goals, and then their semester grade hinges on how well they can grow towards those goals. So they've got to collect notes for themselves of their journey along the way, so that at the end of the semester they can write about that. And then in terms of seek connections, like some way, like a chart or something for students to take all of those noticings and organize them into a story arc for each learning goal is one thing I've had them do. And at the end, take action, write a grade letter or story to select a final grade. Even classroom talk, these 3 steps can underpin classroom talk. Like, hey kid, what do you think? Now build your thinking with a partner or a few peers. Now talk it out as a whole class. It's like the very elegant and simple think, pair, share is essentially the same thing. So what I have just walked you through is essentially the table of contents for Step Aside. And it's available on December 9th and pre-order November 18th. So anyhow, let's chat. All right. And time for some Q&A here in our last 10 minutes or so. And you can put stuff in the chat, or Kia, if you can help me with people who want to unmute and talk to each other or talk to all of us, that would be great. But what questions do you have? And please, there's a contact form and resources on my website. Don't hesitate to reach out via the contact form. It generates an immediate email to me, and I really try to be responsive on that. And there are lots of resources on my website beyond what I've shared with you today. So,
All right, feel free to raise your hand if you would like to make a comment. Okay, we have Jennifer.
go for it.
You are unmute.
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I'm at a wine tasting room while partaking in this, so it's a little noisy. So I just want to say thank you for reinvigorating my, I think, trust of letting students do their, I'm teaching 24 years, letting students think for themselves and work on their own since COVID. I think it's been harder for that. And we're now 1-to-1. And I'm like, ooh, I think I'm going to go back to a reading and writing notebook. I'm going to go old school.
Yeah, I'm definitely,
because I have noticed in the last few weeks when I've done things on papers, the kids are so much more engaged because that's now new and novel, whereas the computer is, you know, perpetual for them and consistent. So I love not only getting the students to do the thinking and the working, but also doing it more hands-on. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that. And yeah, I have really done a lot more like paper analog stuff in the last couple years too. I mean, there are so many digital things that we're doing that they're allowing my students to do things that we cannot do without, and that's amazing. But I really try to think very carefully, like, where do I want this to be digital and where do I want this to be on paper and why? So I see the question in the chat, how often do they do rambling thoughts? My sophomores are doing it like once every 4 weeks. We've got this 4-week loop that they're on for each kind of unit. My IB lets students do it every week. It is part of this loop that their class is on, that every week they're starting with what they notice in their books, and then their rambling thoughts, and then big Harkness discussion, and then they keep reading more, and we go back to the beginning, and we do that for several weeks to get through a text, and then it's essay week, and they write like a big long essay that pulls together all of their thinking. So it just kind of depends on the class with that. So I'm just looking over here. How do I handle when they're wrong? Oh, what a good question. Yeah. If the goal is to end with students' individual and unique understandings of the text, how do you handle it when they are wrong? So, like, what if they said the speaker in our poem today was happy with who she is? I mean, I don't know, conversation, right? It's got to be just some conversation. And I don't know. That's a tough question because on the one hand, you want them to like be able to build their own thinking, their own ideas. But on the other hand, you want to make sure that their ideas are within the realm of possibility of the text that they're working at, right? So I just think like lots of open space for conversation to be able to maybe challenge their thinking a little bit on that. I've been leaning into conferences, especially with my Ivy Lit kids, to have these one-on-one conversations with them about their literary arguments that they're building. And that has been really helpful for that sort of thing. Definitely.
All right,
Oh,
we have Melanie. All right, Melanie.
Hi. Yeah, my question was with you know, schools are so grade driven. How do you grade this, and how how do you score it if it's their original thought, the rubric to it?
yeah, great question. Really great question. And I've done a lot of thinking about this, as you may have noticed from the title of my other book. But so there's a lot in my class that I just check off as complete or partial. And when it comes to their OTAs, I might do like a quick, just like walk around the room, show me an OTA. And I'm going to check it off on my clipboard that you've got it. It gives me a chance to like have a quick, oh, you're missing this part, or make sure with the I notice you're actually quoting something. With your I think you could fill a little bit more of the sticky note or whatever to give them some really quick. I can get around a classroom and do that with everybody in just a few minutes. I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, maybe, as long as I've, planned for them to be doing some other stuff. So many things like this, I just sort of check it off as complete. I do have a rubric for rambling thoughts that sometimes I have the kids just show them to me in class, and I might like look at the title they put on it and ask them a few questions, and just leave it at that and like stamp it off as complete. I have a whole set of stamps that I use for that. Other times I'll have them take a photo of it and turn it in to me in Google Classroom. And I've got a very simple rubric that I can load up with that. And I've got it like rubric in Google Classroom that I can use. I've also turned it into a rubric on a Google form that they can use so that they're like re-engaging with the instructions and making sure they have all the things. So, but I never put like if via the rubric, what goes in the grade book for me there is that it's complete or it's partial. And if it's partial, most of the time they can turn it in again to get it to complete. So.
All right, and we have Peter.
Thank you, Sarah. Just general comment, outstanding work. I
Thank
like
you.
you have taught your students to utilize notebooks. Many of our colleagues are shying away from things that we know as English teachers have been effective over the years.
Yeah.
We need to have the balance like you're showing, the writer's notebook and the digital form. It should not be either or. And I'm happy you're sharing this in this platform. Just thank you for your effective delivery and being an excellent teacher.
Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there's a question in the chat from Miko.
Yep. Let's see.
Are the rubrics on the tiny URL?
They're not, but I could add, see, the thing is I can add some things to that. So I could add the rubrics to that. Would that be helpful? I can do that. I'm just looking for a place to make myself a note. I can add the rubrics. I can do that. And the other thing I can add that I was thinking about today is I made a slideshow with the step-by-step instructions of rambling thoughts for my sophomores because they really kind of needed that with examples of what it all looks like. Would that be helpful? Should I put that on there too?
Yes.
Yeah, I will do that.
It says, yes, the rubrics would be helpful.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. There was a question here from somebody, Elizabeth, how do you handle when students aren't creating the OTAs consistently or seeing connections in their thoughts? like I've got to have space to have conversation with kids. Just today, this one student of mine, he's sitting there and he's like, I don't know what to do. And I came over and sat down next to him and he said, my OTAs have been just kind of dumb since the beginning of the semester and I don't really have anything to draw from. And so I said, all right, so what are you reading and what are you noticing? And he came up with some ideas for me. And I said, well, write them down there on your left-hand side and call me back over when you've got that. And then I had to sort of prompt him and help him to figure out where to go next with his thinking. So having space, I think, to have conversations with kids can help coach them in this work for sure.
Sarah, I can't thank you enough. This has been amazing. I can't wait to actually access your book and really go into some detail on some of your strategies. Our time is up. I thank everyone for your attendance, especially at the end of the day. And please be on the lookout for our next webinar in December, which will feature Jenny Crisco and Glenn McInnish, I believe I have that last name correct, on rhetoric. Thank you all. Have a good evening, and we will see you soon.
Thank you again for the opportunity. And please be in touch, people. I mean it, on my contact form on my website.
I've got a comment. Thank you so much. This has been so informative, and I've been thinking about how we can practice